Anne is a journalist who discovers she's losing her hearing. For her, it's crucial to be able to function well in the world of sound and speech. Kevin, Lynette and their daughters Sarah and Sonia were all born deaf. They identify with the deaf community whose first language is New Zealand Sign Language. There are more than 400,000 New Zealanders who have a hearing loss like Anne, or are deaf like Kevin, Lynette and their daughters. In their different ways, all have to live in a world that takes hearing for granted. "13-year-old Sarah and 11-year-old Sonia discuss their best friends as they walk home from their West Auckland school. It's an afternoon ritual to run through the day's events with their mother, Lynette, over in the conversation corner.
When my babies were born deaf, I was very happy to have deaf children because I know what my life has gone through and I can pass on my experience. We're a close family because it's easier communication and I can teach them more language right from early childhood until they're adults.
Sign language has always been the children's first language, and they began to use it at the age of 6 months. Sign language is a language in its own right, and not merely a translation of English.
When I left school, I joined a firm of panel beaters and had an apprenticeship for 4.5 years. I had 3 years with Auckland Technical College studying. I received my qualification and became a tradesman and have been working as a panel beater for many years.
I passed a accounting certificate and got an award for being top. Now I'm working in computer accounting.
After 3 full-time years study, Lynette topped the class at the Petersham TAFE College. With the help of an interpreter, Lynette battled against the odds and scored marks hearing students could only dream of.
Lynn, where do you find the motivation to work so hard and achieve so well?
I like to show deaf people that they can go to TAFE, do the courses and get better jobs in the future. I'd like to see more and more deaf people do professional jobs.
Hi, can I help you? You're looking for a dress? Evening? Are you looking for a dress? Are you looking for an evening dress? What size? 12. 12.
About
21, 80. 80. Yes. Pink. Yeah. Just use a little. Just use a little.
Hi, how are you today? What notes would you like for that? Sorry? Thanks. I haven't got any tens.
okay.
Thank you.
For everyday business, I like to write notes. But for important business, like with a specialist, a lawyer, having a job interview, or making travel arrangements, I like to have an interpreter with me.
Excuse me, I'd like to know my daughter, she'll be 13 years old next month. Do we have to pay full adult fare?
Yeah, unfortunately 12 and over is full fare.
Oh, bother.
Yeah.
We will book now anyway, from Auckland to Sydney.
Lynette and Kevin can never depend on access to an interpreter, even in an emergency, because at present there are only 4 official interpreters for the whole of the country.
Okay, that'd be fine.
The deaf want New Zealand Sign Language to be legally recognised so that courts and hospitals would have to provide interpreters.
The government must recognise sign language as an official language. We must be treated the same way as other ethnic groups.
Instead of a phone, deaf people can communicate through a TTY. This is a teleprinter, which can also be connected to the house lights, so the lights flash to show that a call is coming in. Though the cost can be a problem, a fax machine is another piece of equipment that can revolutionize communication for the deaf. Sonia's day begins with a flashing light instead of the ring of an alarm clock. At her intermediate school, Sonia has both deaf and hearing friends. Her school is one of 11 schools in Auckland with units that cater for the education of deaf students.
Sonia's been my best friend for about 5 or 6 years. She taught me how to sign most of the things that I needed to know, and I learned lots of stuff in sign language classes.
Now that you've watched that...
Some hearing students choose to spend lunch hours learning sign language so they can communicate with their deaf classmates.
window, sad, grass, rabbit, once.
When I was a little girl, I went to boarding school, and I wasn't allowed to sign there because all the mothers and fathers wanted the deaf children to speak like hearing children. And most of the time, I got told off by the teacher for using sign language.
I go to school with 2 lots of classes, one deaf, one hearing. Sometimes in some subjects I go to the deaf class. In other subjects I'm mainstreamed with the hearing class. I enjoy the company of my deaf class and I enjoy the company of my hearing class. They interpret for me when I don't understand, when there's no interpreter for me.
Okay, what was the quick way to add 99? Michael?
Add 100 and you take away 1.
Okay, add 100 to each one and take away 1. 101 from 210.
109.
3, 1, 4, 6.
I really enjoy working with the children. I have a son who is profoundly deaf. He's at Kelston Primary. So Kelston Deaf Education Centre asked me if I would come and interpret for Sonia and Sarah and help them with their maths. So I've been doing that since last year.
I want you to compare.
Not all of Sonia's classes are integrated. There are also some classes for deaf students only, taught by a qualified teacher of the deaf. In 1988, Sonia took time out from school to act in a television drama series called Strangers. As the deaf girl Kelsey, she had no trouble communicating with the mysterious stranger, Ludo.
I really enjoyed Strangers. It was great doing all the expressions and also working with the other 3 children who acted with me. They signed with me and I taught them signs.
Computers are very useful for every child, particularly in word processing. We use computers in deaf education a lot. Sarah has very good written language skills. She is a very good reader, and consequently that carries over into written language. And her process writing on the computer using the word processor is absolutely wonderful. It allows for her to correct all the minor mistakes which are typical of deaf children, things like verb endings, verb tenses and so on. The computer has freed Sarah to give free rein to her thoughts, if you like.
Do you want to write about Muda? You can. Last year I didn't know Sarah that well and I couldn't communicate with her because I didn't know the signs. But this year she taught me most of the signs and I know how to sign now. She's one of my closest friends and I enjoy her company. She comes into our class daily to do work with us and it's nice being able to help her and being with her.
School this week for Sarah and her friend Heidi has shifted to Whangaparoa. They're here to study the bush and the seashore and to tackle the confidence course.
Down to the other end. Lift your feet. Yep. Hang on tight. Yep.
When I grow up, I'd like to do something with computers or be a graphic designer. But I haven't really thought about it yet. I'd like to go to university if there were interpreters and note takers to help me get through university.
When I leave school, I would like to go to university, perhaps overseas, to Gallaudet University in America. That's where all the deaf people go to do their university studies.
I really don't want my daughters to go away to university, but they might have to, because access to tertiary education is very difficult here in New Zealand for the deaf.
Kevin and Lynette are helping to organise the 50th Jubilee of the Deaf Schools of Auckland. Lynette's in charge of registrations with 800 former students and staff signed up. Kevin's the chairman of the Jubilee Committee. They're helping to compile a history of deaf education in Auckland, and there are hundreds of old photos to be identified. The 50th Jubilee celebrations will be a major event in the history of the local deaf community.
I began to realise that I was losing some of my hearing in my late teens, early 20s, when I found that I couldn't hear things as well as other people. For example, when I was lying in bed and the alarm clock went off, the alarm clock was pretty loud and it wouldn't wake me, but it would certainly wake all the other people in the house. If I was in a crowd of people, it became increasingly difficult for me to hear what was being said. If there was any noise going on in the background, that became the main focus of what I was listening to rather than the conversation that I was having. Often I would mistake one word for another word. I was looking towards their lips to try and pick up the bits that I was missing.
They do a great
People would be trying to get across some information to me, and I'd only be picking up part of it. I'd actually be left feeling quite isolated, so I might smile or nod knowingly, hoping that I was actually saying the right yes or no at the right time, but I was actually feeling quite disjointed from the situation.
Just to see it's all fired up. What is the reaction? that's a living moment. That's living for me. That's a people talking back.
It's great.
And people relate to them, and they're really
we can actually.
special.
Very
well. And you know, it's,
we were. I mean,
well, it
it's
does.
always when your company's involved.
In the end, I'd think twice about going out.
Would you like to come through here with me, Anne? Now, did your doctor send you for a hearing test, or do you think you've got a bit of a hearing problem yourself?
Oh, my doctor sent me.
All right. Have you had a hearing test before?
No, I haven't. I found that I had the hearing equivalent to about an 80-year-old, and that was a big shock to me. People's idea of hearing loss doesn't match up with the reality. They think that it's only older people, and when someone suggested to me that I might be lip reading, I felt quite insulted. I don't think I really wanted to admit that I had a hearing problem, because that was something that other people thought of as annoying or funny.
Well, Anne, your ears look nice and healthy, but I'm afraid the test confirms that they don't work very well. But I guess you realise that. At the hearing level that we see here, even in your better hearing left ear, across a normal room like this, you would be hard-pressed to hear half the words correctly. However, when we turned the volume up, you heard every word correctly. What this means is that if we get you a hearing aid which has been carefully chosen to exactly compensate at each frequency for your hearing loss, you'll be able to hear everything correctly, almost as well as if you had your normal hearing back.
Do you really think a hearing aid's the right thing for me?
It isn't going to restore the hearing. What the test has shown is that when we bring the volume up at each frequency, that you can get all those words correctly. From the examination and the test, we can tell that this is not due to any mechanical problems. It's due to changes in the inner ear. That's the part where the little hairs are that join the mechanical parts of the ear to the nerves that carry the messages to the brain. In fact, that's the commonest place for people to lose hearing, whether it's from aging changes or from noise exposure, or, as in your case, because of a family tendency.
But I don't actually know of any tendency in the family towards this.
Well, our tests do indicate that with you